Thank you, Lucas.
John, 2 days before Kabul fell, you said from that podium, quote, "The city is not right now in any imminent threat environment." How could you get that so wrong?
In the moment that I said it, Lucas, it was true. And I understand. I've seen the reactions out there on social media to what I said.
Surrounded with Taliban.
In the moment that I said it, based on what we knew at the time, it was a true statement. And yes, 2 days later, things dramatically changed. I readily admit that. Things moved very, very quickly, Lucas. And as you heard the chairman up here just a few days ago say that, that there wasn't any indication that, that they had received, that things could evolve as quickly as they did. But
no indication. Cities have been falling,
Lucas,
all week, every day.
Yes, I understand, Lucas. I understand. All I can tell you is, in the moment that I made those remarks, they were accurate. I'm committed 100% to being as truthful and as honest up here and as transparent as I can be. And I'm comfortable that while others may ridicule what I say and take issue with it, I'm comfortable that what I'm giving you is the best information I have the moment that I have it. And I would hope and understand that people would see that events did and have continued to evolve very, very quickly there. To Courtney's excellent line of questioning, the assessment, the threat is going to change, and it could change literally by the hour. So we're trying to give you the best we can and lean as far forward as we can in the moment, but that moment's going to change.
Friday about it could be changing by the hour. You said there was no imminent threat of Kabul falling.
That's, again, I think I've answered the question.
So 10 years ago, then General Lloyd Austin, as head of U.S. forces in Iraq, recommended to the president not to pull troops out of Iraq. Months ago, now Defense Secretary Austin recommended the same thing in Afghanistan. Is he frustrated that presidents are ignoring him?
The Secretary is 100% focused on the mission at hand right now, which is a non-combatant evacuation operation. And he's comfortable that throughout this deliberation, his voice was heard, that he had an opportunity to provide his best advice and counsel to the Commander-in-Chief and to the National Security Team, as did other leaders here at the Pentagon. It was a very inclusive, very deliberate process, and the Secretary believes that the President was given the benefit of a lot of different views, not just his, but a lot of different views. And then the Commander-in-Chief made a decision. That's how it works. That's exactly how the process should work. A very calm and deliberate decision-making process. And once that decision is made, you execute. That's the way this building operates. You execute, and that's what we're doing.
Is the Secretary frustrated that now, not once, but twice, his advice has been ignored by the President?
The Secretary is focused on the mission at hand and not revisiting past decisions one way or another. You give your advice, and a decision is made, and you follow that decision. An order is given, you follow that order, and that's what we're doing. And as you heard the Secretary say, just after the President announced his decision in mid-April, that he fully supports that decision. He's been very clear about that.
Has the Secretary thought about resigning?
No.
John, I have two separate questions. So the first one is on the 29th attack. As General McKenzie said, the statement from CENTCOM on that day, at the end, it mentioned the possibility of civilian casualties. Mm-hmm. So I'm still wondering why General Milley, on September 1st, still called this strike righteous attack.
I think General McKenzie answered that question quite well, Fadi. I'm not sure that I can add to that. And I'm not going to speak for Chairman Milley. But as you saw from General McKenzie, within 24 hours of an indication that there could have been civilian casualties, he launched an investigation, as is his responsibility. And he just completed it. And they did it fairly quickly, but I think they wanted to take the time to be as contextual as possible. So I think he already spoke to that.
Yeah, but I mean, you said it within 24 hours. But General Milley came on September 1st. That's more than 24 hours, and still
again,
called.
Fadi, again, I'm not gonna relitigate the past statements here. As General McKenzie mentioned, every leader in the department that spoke to this in the moment that it was spoken to was speaking to you in good faith based on the information that we had. And that includes me, by the way. Things that I said, obviously, have not turned out to be correct. But it was done in as good faith and effort as possible to be as transparent as we could with what we knew at the time. Obviously, we now know more things and different things that has completely changed the character of this strike. And again, we're trying to be as open and transparent as we can when we know things.
John, I'm still trying to understand how the U.S. military followed a car for 8 hours and took a fire-to-hellfire missile when a car was pulling into a driveway, not even pulling out of the driveway en route to the airport. Why was the decision taken? As we've now learned, there was another surveillance drone showing that there were kids or individuals on the ground. But I'm still confused with that car pulling into the driveway. Why was that the moment that you would strike?
Well, Jen, I think you can understand now that we're going to review this investigation. I really am not in a position today to relitigate the tick-tock of what happened and in what order. General McKenzie, I thought, did a very fair contextual job on Friday, walking you through almost minute by minute what they were seeing and the decisions that they made in the moment. And so I think I'm just going to leave it the way General McKenzie left it on Friday, and then let the reviewer of this investigation come to their own conclusions about
Can
this.
you explain to us how these drone strikes, when they take place in a place like Afghanistan, at what level is the targeter? Was the targeting team at the airport? Was it sitting at CENTCOM in Tampa? Was it at Fort Bragg? Was it out in Las Vegas? At what level was the decision being made?
The decision was made in Kabul by the strike cell commander in Kabul.
And lastly, is there any plan to evacuate the remaining members of the family? They are doing interviews saying that nobody's reached out to them for payments, and they want to be moved to the U.S. because they feel their lives are in danger now that they've been outed as having had family members who worked for the U.S. government.
Yeah, I've certainly seen those comments. I don't have anything to confirm or speak to today in terms of the physical movement of the family members, but we know that Central Command is working through how best to reach out to them for the issue of payments, but also to determine the validity of this interest in moving out. And I don't want to get ahead of. I certainly want to speak for the family, and I don't want to get ahead of where CENTCOM is in that process.
But the Defense Secretary would support removing that family if they want to come.
I believe the Secretary of Defense would absolutely support if the family wanted to leave Afghanistan and come to the United States. I believe he would support that, assuming that all the proper legal hoops were worked through. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of a process or a decision that hasn't been made yet, but I think he would absolutely consider that. Yeah.
Is the intention to get every American out who wants to leave, plus as many SIV holders or applicants, or is it to get out all Americans plus as many Afghans out as possible by the August 31st?
As many Americans who want to leave that we can get as fast as possible. As many of our SIV applicants who we can get to the airport and get them out as fast as possible. As many vulnerable Afghans that we can also work towards getting. But we understand the challenges of time and space here. We're mindful of that. That's why we are trying to continue to keep up this capacity and even improve it if we can.
And just to follow up to Lita's question, you said you have the ability to get all Americans out who want to leave, and you said several thousand. Do you have a percentage for how many Americans have been removed? Without giving a number, have more than half been removed?
I can't give you that number, Idris, because I don't think there's a perfect number that we know with certainty of all Americans in Afghanistan. There's no requirement. You can't force an American when they go to a foreign country to tell you that they're there. And we encourage them to do that. The State Department has a robust set of communication vehicles at their disposal, especially in a country like Afghanistan. We want to know when Americans are there, but they don't have to tell us. So that's why it's difficult for us to give you, the denominator here. How many are there? And what I can tell you is and this is out of my lane, but I'll do it anyway. I mean, the State Department has been working very hard to reach out to those who they know are there, or even who they hear are there, to communicate to them, to let them know what evacuation plans are possible and achievable for them. So they're working very hard at this. Our job at the Defense Department is to help facilitate their safe passage to the airport, and then getting them manifested and getting them on a plane out.
But of the ones who have registered, have more or less than half of the Americans who have registered, have they been evacuated?
I do not know. I don't. You'd have to go to the State Department for what they think they have on the registry, but I think even they would tell you, Idris, that is an imperfect database, because not every American has to register. So it's perfectly conceivable that you might have an American who nobody knew was in Afghanistan, but still pipes up on the net and says, I want to get out. And we're going to help that person get out to the best ability that we can. Barbara.
I don't really understand this. This is the answer we've gotten for days and days and days from every podium in this town. Even if this administration does not have the denominator, that is not my question. My question is, can this administration tell the American people how many Americans it has evacuated from Afghanistan? And if you cannot, can you please explain, not the denominator?
I understand, Barbara.
Why can't you just say the number?
Barbara, I think we're just going to leave it at several thousand right now, and I understand that's not a satisfying answer to you. I would tell you that the number literally changes almost by the hour.
But so does everything else.
I understand, Barbara. We're going to leave it at several thousand for right now.
May I
Helene?
have a follow-up, since everybody else asked like 8 questions? Thank you. I have 2 other follow-ups, if I may. Just to clarify General Taylor's answer, if there have been no missions outside of Kabul, can you tell us about missions that have taken place at least outside essentially the fence line of the airport? And my other follow-up is, as you prepare to depart, whenever that happens, your previous retrograde, as you called it, included provisions for destruction of weapons in place. Can we assume that this part of the effort to leave Afghanistan will also include that what you cannot put on an airplane, any weapons you can't put on an airplane or dangerous items you would destroy in place?
I think the general answered your first question. There's no other additional operations to speak to. We continue to facilitate safe passage.
Outside Kabul, I believe.
There are no additional operations to speak to that I'm aware of.
Not outside.
Outside the airport either. But we continue to facilitate safe passage for Americans and SIVs as they need to get to the airport. And as I mentioned to Lita, just in the last 24 hours, I can tell you that several hundred Americans have made it safely to airport gates for further on transportation.
With U.S. government assistance, then?
I'm just going to leave it at that, Barb. As for your question on retrograde, the short answer is yes, as a part of any retrograde. And I know that's a technical Pentagon term, that, but the drawdown of both people and equipment will be done in the same manner that we would do it anywhere else. And obviously, there's a strong bias to be able to get our material out with our people. If there needs to be destruction or other disposition of equipment there at Hamid Karzai International Airport, then we'll do that, and we'll do that appropriately.
You can go.
Lucas, you've had like 7. Go ahead.
John, can you please update us on the number of immediate family members of U.S. service members in Afghanistan?
Update you in the number?
Yeah.
I don't have a whole number on that, no.
Okay, so, I mean, the withdrawal ended on August 30th, and today is November 10th. I mean, how is it possible that the department doesn't know how many immediate family members are still left
I didn't
US
say
service
that.
in Afghanistan?
I didn't say we didn't know. I said I don't have a number for you. We believe it's certainly most likely in the dozens. But one of the reasons we put the memo out last week was to encourage service members to come forward. it's a dynamic thing, Fadi. I mean, you make it sound like a snap on a chalk line and boom, you got to know every number. That's not even true for American citizens. As American citizens in Afghanistan continue to come forward, because maybe they've changed their mind. Maybe they didn't want out by August 30th, and maybe now they do. And so the number has changed a little bit. We're working this as hard as we can. We take the obligation seriously to our people and to their families. And that's why we put the advisory out to the services last week to give them a place, a portal, where they can go to put information on there that we can then share with our State Department colleagues to get them out. We're going to stay at this. I've said it before, but I think it bears repeating. The military mission in Afghanistan is over, but the mission itself to continue to get our people out of Afghanistan and back home or to their new homes in the United States is not over, and we're going to continue to work inside the interagency to do that.
I understand and appreciate all of that, but the question remains. These are immediate family members of U.S. service members in Afghanistan. While many Afghans who have no relatives in the U.S. were evacuated a long time ago, the department, up until last week, did not issue a memo or consider it this issue. I mean, don't you think it's late in the process?
So,
don't you think this should have been a priority to begin with?
It was a priority. Fadi, let me answer your question, please.
No, I'm just trying to explain.
I know that. I get it. But we did take it as a serious priority back then. We were working it. Just because there wasn't a memo on the streets doesn't mean that we weren't focused on it or that we weren't talking to people about it. But more and more people were coming forward and wanted help for how to organize this effort. And now that the State Department has set up an interagency process over there, we now want to more discreetly, more carefully funnel these requests and that information to the care coordinator as appropriate. So it's an ongoing process. It's somewhat iterative. We're getting better at it over time. And the fact that that we didn't issue a memo earlier doesn't mean that we weren't thinking about it, weren't focused on it, weren't hearing from troops that were concerned about family members. I mean, I have to take issue, I think, with the tone of your question, which seems to be that we just didn't care until last week, and that's just not true.
Yeah, but the fact remains that we are talking about that issue still now.
And you know what, Fadi? We're probably going to be talking about that issue for some time to come. And that has to be okay. It doesn't mean that we're not taking it seriously. In fact, quite the contrary.
Is there any concern about their safety in Afghanistan?
Of course there is. Of course there is. Yeah, Lucas. Yeah, Lucas.
John, did the Taliban in any way provide any intelligence or any support with this drone strike that killed those 2 ISIS terrorists?
I'm not going to talk about intelligence matters one way or the other.
Rule it out.
I'm not going to talk about intelligence matters one way or the other.
Taliban supporting this drone strike in any way?
We had useful intelligence on our own to conduct this strike.
Do you consider the Taliban and the Haqqani network separate entities?
Lucas, I'm not going to give you a breakdown here, a characterization of the Taliban or Haqqani. Now, Lucas, you got to remember what we're focused on here, and that's on getting more people out and getting our troops out, completing this mission. And I'm not sure what benefit it does for me to try to characterize one group or another. We know that the
deputy leader of the Taliban is Surjan Haqqani, who has a $10 million bounty on his head. People should know. Are these separate entities, or
we know that there is a certain matter of commingling here. I mean, there's a marbling, if you will, of Taliban and Haqqani. What I'm pushing back a little bit on you, Lucas, is the relevance of that discussion to what we're trying to do today, which is complete an evacuation safely and to get our troops and our forces at the airport out safely. That's what we're focused on.
One more question. Every major newspaper and television news outlet has said that the U.S. military brass recommended to the president to leave 2,500 troops in Afghanistan, not pull out. Have you asked any of those outlets for a correction?
I'm sorry, say that one again.
Every major newspaper and television news outlet has reported that top Pentagon brass, from the Defense Secretary to the head of U.S. forces in the Middle East and Afghanistan, to the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, recommended to the President that 2,500 U.S. troops should have stayed in Afghanistan, not been pulled out. Have you asked any news outlet for a correction to those stories?
Thanks for repeating it. We don't make it a habit to talk publicly one way or the other. Right, wrong, up, down, more or less, about the advice and counsel that Pentagon leaders give the Commander-in-Chief.
What about correcting the record?
Louis,